Sorry. Okay. If the quest for a physical theory of everything and some of the strange concepts that have sprung from it strikes you as somewhat mystical, then this is just the book you need to explore the idea further. Deciphering the Cosmic Number examines the friendship between the physicist Wolfgang Pauli and the psychologist Carl Gustav Jung. Disparate though their fields may appear at first, the two men's search for the ultimate building blocks of human reality led them on to common ground. In Jung's word, the no man's land between physics and the psychology of the unconscious. The seeds for this extraordinary relationship were sown during the first 2 decades of the 20th century, both culturally and scientifically one of the richest periods of recent history. Freud had only recently developed his ideas on the unconscious and the psychoanalysis, which were now being popularized as well as criticized by Jung. In 1905, Einstein revolutionized the world of physics with his special theory of relativity, while artists were reassembling notions of reality by delving into cubism and expressionism. There's actually an interesting book about Einstein and Picasso, and how cubism and expressionism relate to Einstein, because they both sort of use a geometric analysis in how they are looking at things. Anyway, Wolfgang Pauli was born into this ferment of ideas in 1900 and first burst onto the physical scene at the tender age of 21 with a paper on relativity theory that even impressed Einstein himself. He soon joined the celebrated physicist Niels Bohr in his quest to describe the fundamental structure of atoms. Pauli is today lesser known than his colleagues Werner Heisenberg and Erwin Schrödinger, respectively his friend and foe, but he made fundamental contributions to the development of particle physics and quantum mechanics. I mean, yes, those names are bigger, but Pauli is still a big name. They include the prediction of a new particle, the neutrino, 26 years before it was detected in experiments, and his formulation of the exclusion principle, which explains why electrons orbit the nucleus of an atom in precisely the pattern they do, and which won him the 1945 Nobel Prize in Physics. Alongside a bent for rational reasoning and a talent for mathematical fireworks, Pauli had always nurtured an interest in the irrational as a driving force of scientific creativity. Science, as Pauli's mentor Arnold Sommerfeld pointed out, had grown out of mysticism, and the bewildering patterns that emerged from the study of atomic structure seemed no less esoteric. In fact, Sommerfeld described the numerical arrangements of electrons as somewhat Kabbalistic and likened the rules of atomic physics to the teachings of alchemists and the witch's kitchen of Faust. Okay, point of fact, Newton, like Sir Isaac Newton, was a hardcore mystic, and like he thought he was writing down the ideas of God. He thought that's what physics was. He was really into alchemy. He thought he was writing down the ideas of God, and it was all like alchemy to like Newton. So the idea of like this great scientist, that's not how the history was. Ugubi asks, how many earlier physicists of the 20th century were talking to the logical positivist philosophy of science guys? I don't know exactly how many. I know there was people were talking though. There was the Vienna Circle, and they would talk to people in Vienna. So, like, they had people come in and out of the Vienna Circle. I don't remember my history specifically, though, Ugubi. Really, the problem was once it got past World War II, things sort of splintered off and people stopped talking to each other. But, like, pre-World War II, I think there was a lot more people talking. And I like a little bit of my history of science and philosophy of science. The idea that like we are really far out of alchemy is not true. We've been trying very hard in the last 150 years to make it sound like our science is like not alchemy, and for like good reason, and also for some marketing. But the idea that it is really not. In the history of chemistry, and they didn't communicate much, and it's been downhill from there. It has been downhill from there. in the history of chemistry, when they were doing nuclear physics and they actually started to figure out that you could actually turn lead into gold. There's like these letters between the people working on it and like this guy's advisor, and they said, "Do not, for the love of God, call this transmutation of lead into gold," because they were so afraid that what they were trying to do now was legit science, and they did not want to be associated with the only 60 years earlier last gasp of alchemy, which was like in the 1850s or something. Like, it was still around. So this is not like that old. Yeah, well, science is pretty much in communication with philosophy science right now. It's just not reflecting the popular media. Well, that's fair. That's fair. Ogubi. It's just, a lot of times philosophy of science people are not talking to like the physicists. I mean, a lot of times they are, but some things they do are like the physicists don't care for good reason, and some things the physicists do, like the philosophers don't care about also. Yeah, we've got some scientism problems at the moment, Retheus, where people are usually a little too wedded to what the scientists say, and it's not that's not healthy either. So you went to a Phil Bio micro bio talk. That's cool. Okay, but like, yeah, exactly how esoteric does science get? It depends. It depends what you're talking about. Yeah, well, the metaphysicians always have their heads up their butts. That's just the nature of metaphysics, and that's speaking from me, who likes metaphysics. Well, actually, I like metaphysics. I don't like what current metaphysicians are doing. Anyway, but like the history of this, like the history of science and like alchemy is very interesting. Inspired by his, actually, and on that point, if you want to go look up some really what, having their heads up their butts, some interesting stuff. You look at the history of medicine. What do you think? I don't know, the Platonic ideal of defiance. Well, I don't think there are Platonic ideals. So if there's a Platonic ideal of defiance, I don't think it exists, because I don't think any Platonic ideals do. You like some current metaphysics? Well, you'd have to show me what was good then, Ugubi. Cinesemiac says, so for the scientists doing normal science, they tend to be disinterested in examining the system in which they have structured their life. Well, there was some good like sociology done. Most of the time, if you're just trying to do some good science, you don't have to look at all the other stuff that's going on, especially if your science is working like as it should. You have new ideas, you're making new discoveries. There's no need for you to go other places for stuff. Once you want to, or maybe if like you're like sort of running up against a brick wall, then you have to get out of your normal science and get into some sort of revolutionary science. And this goes back to Kuhnian revolutions and that sort of period of time and those ideas. Isn't a Platonic ideal basically the prime version form of the thing? Yes, Retheus, but like I don't know what a prime version or form of the thing is. I mean, you can define it for me, but like I don't know if there's any sort of like official version of defiance that like is like in the like state of the world, just defiance. This is what it is. I was gonna say that about social science. Okay. Oh, personal definition? I don't have a personal definition of defiance. I mean, that's a good question, but I don't have one. Oh, yeah. The scientists are not going to want to talk about philosophy of science in a semiax. That's like not their business. Talk to them. If you want to hit them up, pretend like you're interested in what they're researching. And then maybe you can work in the philosophy of science later. I mean, if you want to actually talk to the people, you have to like feign interest in, what people are saying. Yeah, normal science. Yeah, that's the Kuhn stuff, and you can get yourself into revolutionary science. But anyway, but this is the thing. Once you're getting out of the normal science, then you are getting into this sort of like gray area of like, whoa, how do you get out of what you thought was science? Okay. Yeah, LARP as an engineer. That's funny. Inspired by his mentor's interest in the occult, Pauli became fascinated by the work of two medieval thinkers, Johannes Kepler and Robert Fludd. Kepler, inspired by the harmonious symmetry of Copernicus' heliocentric worldview and Pythagoras' reverence for geometry and number, sought to derive a complete description of the cosmos primarily in terms of mathematics. To him, geometry was the archetype of beauty in the world. His writings, in keeping with the spirit of the times, were permeated with mysticism, but his bent for mathematics produced some truly scientific results. His laws of planetary motion are still in use today. Well, there is a lot of religion tied up with the old stuff. And see, this is right here. I have a little bit of a beef with this reviewer because the mathematics produced some truly scientific, in scare quotes, laws of planetary motion. This was science back in the day. Our concept of science, alchemy and mysticism had overlap with science. It's not so different. And so the idea that it's scientific now, it was science, it is science, it's just old science. The secret agenda of the masked philosopher incognito as a science groupie. Robert Fludd, right? Yeah, Robert Fludd. Fludd, on the other hand, remained firmly rooted in the traditions of mysticism and alchemy. Rather than debasing nature with vulgar mathematics, he endeavored to describe the true philosophy by means of pictures, not merely illustrative diagrams, but universal forms, what you might call mandalas, which in the alchemist tradition depict the whole as made up of opposing parts. Kepler and Fludd dually clashed over their different worldviews. Yeah, I mean, you got one person who's breaking stuff down, reducing it to math, and the other one who's trying to build stuff up. It's going to be a different view. Pauli, surprisingly for a physicist, harbored sympathy for Fludd as well as for Kepler. Perhaps anticipating Jung's later diagnosis of an extremely unbalanced personality, he felt attracted to the universality of Fludd's view of the world, which encompassed the human mind as well as science. But there was another feature of the Kepler-Fludd clash that resonated with Pauli. To Kepler, the most perfect number of them all was 3, but to Fludd it was 4. So we got a clash between the numbers 3 and 4. That's amazing. Pauli too had been torn between these two numbers in his own work. To derive his exclusion principle, he had to allow 4 rather than 3 quantum numbers, a break with convention that Bohr admiringly described as complete insanity. The two numbers, together with another number that mystifies physicists to this day, the fine structure constant with a value close to 1 out of 137, made frequent appearances in Pauli's dreams, whose analysis was to become a central feature in his relationship with Jung. Yeah, but you got to make friends first is the point. It's a hidden agenda. I love doing it Socratic. Remember, they killed Socrates in the semiotics. Mario's backpack in Super Mario Sunshine. Yeah, no one really, the cool part about Socrates was people liked him, but they eventually got tired and he got killed. So you've got to be careful emulating Socrates a bit. Anywho. Yeah, this is I think why what's his name, Lakatos would say if you look at the history of science, and this is what Lakatos said, was that anything goes. I think am I getting my history right? I'm blanking slightly. But that anything goes. The history of science does not follow the scientific method. It never did. And the idea that there was a scientific method it's just bullshit. People were trying to make it sound like we were doing something that had a official structure. But it's just not true. So this is why, even though I don't think anything goes, if you look at the history, there's a lot of stuff like this that these ideas come out of left field. So Socrates was probably on the spectrum, to be honest. They were ableist against him. It's very, very, very hard to do psychological analyses across thousands of years in culture like that. But yeah, I mean, you could definitely say he had some sort of grading personality that wouldn't be that we might call on the spectrum now. Anywho, Jung, too, was interested in the occult. Like Freud, Jung believed that dreams held the key to an individual's psyche, but unlike Freud, he viewed them as a portal to a collective unconscious, which transcends individual experience. The vocabulary of this collective unconscious is made up of archetypes, symbolic notions, or units of meaning that are common to all humans and transcend language, culture, and rationality. Jung's work with patients led him to think of the psyche as an interplay of opposing pairs, introversion, extroversion on the one level, and thinking, feeling, and sensation, intuition on the other. Yeah, hot take? No, and it is, you're right, it's not implausible. Psychological suffering, according to Jung, was a result of an imbalance between these components. A healing of the rift would be signaled by the appearance of mandala-like images, balanced arrangements of opposing forces in a patient's dream. I just want to point something out. The idea of balance and imbalance is like it shows up all over the place, and no one really has a goddamn clue what this actually means. Serious question from Infernal. Did Jung use any drugs? Because Freud's thinking was very messed up because of drugs and other stuff. I bet he did. I don't know if he did. I mean, that be something you could probably Google quick. I could do it right now, but I mean, it's like I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, drugs. It was. I mean, you got to think at the time when he was living, it was in the area. Like, this is just things people were doing. It wasn't even like it was illegal or anything. So you have to think these folks were experimenting with drugs at the time. No, I agree. Getting stoned never helped me. Well, it doesn't. It helps with some things. Usually does not help getting clear, or it doesn't help with most things. I will say that if I am really stuck on a problem, I can get myself completely hammered, and the last thing I'm holding on to before I black out, that's usually the thing that I have to worry about. Yeah. Okay. His ideas naturally led Jung, I guess, who is this? Oh, Jung to study the alchemists. Mathematics does have balance as a mathematical definition, but whenever you're talking about imbalance and balance when it comes to the mind, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, you really seem to be dealing with like old school versions of like fluid theories, like humors, where you're saying the humors are out of balance by literally talking about like balancing liquids. And this is like nervous energy, like there's some sort of like energy that you're actually pumping through your veins. Puff puff. Treat your lungs well, folks. You don't get very many lungs. Only 2 of them, and they have to be in good shape your whole life. So eat your weed is what I'm saying. You gotta find balance, man. Puff puff pass. Pass. Okay. His ideas naturally led Jung to study the alchemists, who were also talking in symbols and believed that ultimate wisdom was the philosopher's stone. The philosopher's stone would be achieved through a unification of opposing states, for example, the male and the female. Jung went on to incorporate alchemy into his analytic psychology. He made great progress, but his journeys into the occult brought derision from colleagues. To avoid ridicule and also to build a more universal theory, he needed to give his mystical theories some kind of scientific footing. In 1932, an opportunity to do so was delivered to his doorstep in the shape of Wolfgang Pauli, who, plagued by bouts of depression, hypersensitivity to perceived failure, and a tendency to excess, had decided to seek help of an analyst. Ugubi says, the Heideggerian scholars I met peer pressured me to smoke weed because they said I'd understand Heidegger. I said, no, I'm analytic. Young pro-trans base? Could be. I've read Heidegger, Ugubi. Weed will not help you. No. Heidegger's really freaking difficult, but you can. It's doable. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's just dumb. Weed's not gonna help you understand Heidegger. I mean, weed's not going to help you understand anything but weed, really. Okay. Frank Ramsey? I mean, well, I don't even want to... Like, the idea that, like Frank Ramsey, like, for the non-analytic philosophers in here, Frank Ramsey's basically God, okay? Like, Frank Ramsey did more by the age of 27 when he died of something we can cure easily now than, like, anyone will probably ever, like any of us will ever do in our lives. Frank Ramsey... There's a joke called, like, Ramsey's, like, hypothesis. It says, if you ever think you have a good idea, chances are Frank Ramsey thought of it already and said it better than you did. So, I don't know what's going on in Frank Ramsey's head. You dislike Heidegger except for Dreyfus? Yeah, Dreyfus, there's a series of lectures that Dreyfus put out, like, you can get the audio, and I listened to those, and they're a lot of fun. No one has ever understood Heidegger. Don't make this about drugs. It's poor writing. It is poor writing, but I mean, there is something to be learned there. So, yeah, it's like, what would Frank Ramsey think? I have no idea what Frank Ramsey would think. No one has any idea what Frank Ramsey would think. Anyway, continuing with this bit. I mean, it's only 4 pages more on page 3. Examples of what? Frank Ramsey? Alright, you might know Wittgenstein, Cinesemiotics. Wittgenstein thought he solved all of philosophy. Frank Ramsey went and found problems with Wittgenstein and convinced Wittgenstein to come back and do more philosophy. So that's like an example of something that he did just because he was like, no, Wittgenstein, you're wrong, and this is why. There's Ramsey Numbers in Mathematics. Ramsey translated the Tractatus. He came up with a lot of decision theory. Yes, these are things that he did. And like I said, he was like 20 or something when he did this. He was one of the people that signed off on Wittgenstein's, I think, doctorate. But, like, he was like a full professor at like 22. And he was the one, like, reading Wittgenstein and telling him, like, no, Wittgenstein, you gotta fix this crap. Let's see, I'm trying to remember if there's anything that, like, easy that you can tell people. Like, he did economic theory. There's a Ramsey economic theory. So, like, you can look it up. Go hit up his Wikipedia page. It's, like, stupid stuff. Yeah. So, hey, look. Bad Wittgenstein. No, I like Wittgenstein. You see, I wrote a paper. It's right there. It has to do with Wittgenstein. See, look. I got published recently, Ugubi. So I'm stumping for myself. It's epistemology. Okay, so now we're actually talking about the book. We finally got somewhere. We're actually talking about the book. You'll read it? Yeah, please do. It's thankfully short. Yeah, it's a no-name journal. But it's fine. I don't care. It's like, I like the paper and I was happy to doing it. So yeah. Yeah. Anywho. So the best part about it, like I said, is short, and if you don't even want to get through it, you only have to get through the first half, really. Although I think if you know anything about Wittgenstein, I get to talk about the end of uncertainty, and I think I do it better than anyone else. My analysis of the last philosophical things Wittgenstein wrote before he died. So I think that's the best thing about it. It's got a cool little premise. It's short, and then I get to talk about the last passages in Uncertainty, which were dated 2 days before Wittgenstein died, and I think I explain them better than other people do. So that's my spiel. Anywho's, Arthur I. Miller's thoroughly researched book gives a fascinating account of the two men's journey into the unexplored territory between the physical and the psychic, the most fascinating yet the darkest hunting ground of our times, as Jung put it. Jung immediately recognized in Pauli an imbalanced mind, heavily geared towards the rational, a diagnosis that eventually brought Pauli some relief from his emotional troubles. Pauli made dream analysis, whether conducted by himself or by Jung, a long-term habit. No more interruptions? Good luck with that. The symbol he encountered in his dreams and the parallels between Jung's philosophy of archetypes on the one hand and the dualities and symmetries that occur in physics on the other led Pauli to believe that science may also be fueled by archetypes and that it can be approached from behind by investigating them. This would open up new avenues for the exploration of physics which rationality alone couldn't reach. Oh, thank you, Ugabi, for getting that link. I mean, what would the archetypes be in philosophy of physics? I'm not sure, but like the idea that you could actually do some archetypes in physics, like there might be something there. Pauli re-examined Kepler and Flood in light of Jungian psychology, focusing on the role of the irrational in scientific creativity. He argued that the link between sensory experience and the rational concepts that make up a scientific theory is formed by archetypes, inner images pre-existent in the human psyche. All right, and on this point, the quantum gravity people, yeah, a lot of this stuff, I'd say Ubi is like, it's just helpful. Like, they're already smart people, and this is just helping them to go be smart anyway. But there is something like in the phenomenology of gravity at this point. How can we understand how quantum and other sort of like phenomena relate, like gravity on a big scale? Because basically we've been stuck with the same theories of gravity for a very long time at this point. People want to like overcome Einstein, which ain't gonna happen, but they wanna do this. And so how do you actually take the data in a different way? You know, Ubi says you don't like the Jung archetypes, but it might accidentally open up my psychological analysis for bias or more creative ideas. Yeah, I think a lot of psychology is like that. It may not be right in the long run, but it would be very helpful in the short run. And so go ahead and do it. Honor supervisor working on theories of space-time eliminativism. Yeah, so this is, I think, one of these ideas that might actually, you know, if you got the right psychology at the right time with the right physics, you may actually get somewhere. Like I said, it might just be lucky, or it might only work for a short amount of time, but who cares as long as you're making progress. An individual's pleasure in understanding nature that allows these archetypes to emerge from the unconscious and create new knowledge. He interpreted Kepler as a thinking type, seeking a mechanical understanding of the unifying approach as exemplified by alchemy. To us, unlike Kepler and Flood, he wrote, the only acceptable view appears to be the one that recognizes both sides of reality, the physical and the psychical, as compatible with each other, and one that can embrace them simultaneously. Pauli published the culmination of his work on Kepler and Flood in a book written jointly with Jung, The Interpretation of Nature and Psyche. Jung, for his part, sought confirmation for his quasi-mystical ideas from the insights into physics provided to him by Pauli. Among other things, Jung was developing synchronicity, the idea that simultaneous events all over the world are linked in a mysterious way that enabled telepathy and clairvoyance. Jung found this idea mirrored in Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which asserts that at a quantum level, the world is not deterministic, that is determined by causal relationships, but random. If the physical world could be acausal, then might there be a connection to psychic synchronicity. Jung and Freud embarked on a detailed study of this idea, which was also published in The Interpretation of Nature and the Psyche. I mean, this is the gaps in physics, I guess you could talk about. I don't know if that's a good way to... I think it's sort of dying out as a good idea, but people have been... I guess this may have been the start, actually, of people looking for the gaps in physics, in, like, the quantum physics, to see if, like, that's where mind and other strange things could be. But despite the lofty and sometimes downright crazy ideas covered by Jung and Pauli, even UFOs make an appearance... Anfernal says, a philosophy of almost anything is possible in some alternative parallel universe. Yeah, but the idea here is that there are gaps in our universe, Anfernal. So if you can find a gap, you can put, it's called God in the gaps, actually. It's an old theory where is God if physics is like controlling everything? Well, there's gaps in physics, and this is sort of where people have tried to like wedge in these weird ideas. So it's not that it's anything is possible, it's that there's still like dead areas that we can't account for in a lot of our physics, and they want to put like fancy things there. The acausal stuff is interesting, but how did the psychic stuff relate to it? I have no idea how they related to it. Uh, I mean, a lot of times this stuff is just they want it to be there, and that's why they put it there. Ugubi says, well, two different accounts, probabilistic or weird science stuff explained by spiritual weird stuff, and just different ontology of consciousness and physical reality. Yeah, you can do probabilistic stuff, and I'm talking about the former. Yeah, that's what a lot of stuff goes on. Is that people think that because it's probabilistic you can get in there. I don't actually think you can. And then weird sciences stuff by spiritual stuff. Yeah, that is different, but I don't think that's what I think that's what they were talking about here is sort of this weird stuff in the gaps. Okay, yeah, even UFOs make an appearance. But this book won't give you headaches. Miller's account of their adventures is captivating, succinct, and accessible. You don't need any previous knowledge of physics or psychology or alchemy, for that matter, to enjoy it. Two personalities are central to the story, and Miller provides plenty of personal detail to keep you smiling, even in the face of some heavy physics, which Miller expertly condenses into digestible chunks accessible to novices. Miller's explicit descriptions of Polly's dreams and their analysis by Jung paint a visceral picture of the two men's approach not just to treating Polly's emotional troubles, but also to unraveling the archetypes that underlie science. Sinesemiak says it's very simple that by allowing for yourself to think about cultural connections, you may happen upon one of them that show a causality. Yeah, I mean, you can get there once you get past looking at like the straight up physics of it, and like you said, the cultural connections. That's it. I think you're actually absolutely right. Like it's psychologically, I think you're 100%. That's how these things go. Once you get past, once you start thinking that on a greater like thinking sociologically, like or socially wide, not sociologically. Network theory deals with that concept. I should know more about network theory. I don't know much about that. I've seen that a few times too. But like that's the thing. Once you get past the hard physics, then all of a sudden you have to deal with the acausal, and it gets there. And Fromm says things are connected in many levels due to different structures needs. Yeah, that's what it is. It's this multi-level concept, and I should know more about that. It's like a good idea, because a lot of things have to have multi-level interactions, and the causal structures of multi-levels, we're really not good at talking about causal interactions across different levels. Like how does is there downward causation, upward? There's always upward causation. Small things can affect big things, but can big things like the mind affect small things like the biology in your mind? So anywho, all right, let's finish this up. We got one more paragraph. Today, science has little room for adventures like Jung and Pauli's, and now their validity would be heavily questioned on account of their unscientific nature. Jung's reputation is somewhat dented by his interest in the occult, and Pauli is remembered exclusively for his contributions to physics. Interestingly, and perhaps ironically, it was Pauli's insights into particle physics rather than his journeys into the dark hunting grounds that have a lasting impact on psychology. PET and fMRI scans, prime tools in understanding the neural connections in the brain, are based on particle physics. But whatever you may think of Pauli and Jung's joint work, the fact remains that no one has yet cracked the mystery of the human mind, and physics is still without a theory of everything. Their questions are just as open now as they were then, and their attempts to answer them, whether you consider them a bold attempt to transcend boundaries or dangerous pseudoscience, makes a fascinating read. Okay, that was fun. Ugubi says, I think that science has lots of room for these adventures, just not pop science or business. Yeah, of course. Like, I think that sort of like the history of these things, it swings one way and the other. Like, at different points, things like this, where Pauli and Jung get to talk about these things, like that happens more sometimes, and then it goes away, and then we go away from that, and we're gonna go back. So we'll get back to artsy and mindy things, and this is how these things go. And like I said before, any serious historian of science and philosophy knows, and it's just a fact, that there is no like standard scientific method. Yeah. Well, what happens is they happen in the fringe of what's like the pop science is like what's called like there's gonna be new science. Like new science is it's still happening. So people are looking at in different areas that they weren't looking before. So we're just going to have science that's being done in places where it wasn't before, and this is where things are going to be messy. Like if you want to talk about new things like what's it called? Like so all this like the way people are affected by the internet, advertising, all these things. Oh, Sinister Semiax, thank you for the bits and the subs.
You're winning, sir. Oh, thank you very much.
And for your suggestions. I
Science
appreciate a lot.
Semiotics gifted 1 bits. Science Semiotics says, Party 1.
Yeah, party 1. So thanks again for being here. Appreciate it. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So like there's a lot of new science going on. And do you think we really have a grasp on how we are affected by all of our new technology? No way in hell do we really have a grasp how we're affected by all of this stuff. It's only just been like happening in the last few years, and people are doing different things, and it's kind of working sometimes, not all the time. But like this is the sort of thing, like there's going to be this sort of at the fringe of what counts as like big data. And it's all going to be these ideas that we have no idea what is going to like shake out of it. So yeah, like big data means nothing nowadays. It's just like whatever people want to call it. But that's the sort of thing. Like it has something to do with psychology, sociology, internet, culture, all sorts of weird stuff. And so, is it physics? No. Is it going to be like some sort of mathematical message transferring theory going to be related? Yeah. There's going to be like structures of communication that are overlaid on this. But like this is all going to be very new. What's interesting is that Kane B is really the only channel on YouTube going deep into these sorts of science philosophy connections. Most other philosophy YouTube videos are on social leftist stuff, which is nice. I'm a socialist, but the kids only watch YouTube. Yeah. Oh, Infernal, have a good night. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great rest of the stream. Yeah, I'm probably going to get off in a bit, too. I've been going for a few hours now. Oh, well, I'm so... Yeah, I know. It's not easy to do... content. It's very hard to do content. If you check out my socials or whatever, I publish all these videos to my YouTube actually. So I haven't published. I'm like 100 off. I'm probably I don't know when was the last time I published, but like I've got a bunch. So you can check out all the stuff there. But yeah, I'm not like most people aren't doing the hard science. Yeah, everyone's kind of times have been rough. People are beaten up. I'm beaten up. So I hope you all you're doing okay. Like you're getting through it. Whatever it is you're working on. Yeah. So if you can make content, it's great. But making good content is not easy. If you're healthy, you have good knowledge and style, but popular. But see, there's a lot to know. That's the other thing. It's not so easy to get this whole system set up. I mean. I've got a laptop. I've got 2 monitors. I've got my pad. I've got huge amount of stuff. This took a while to figure out. This ain't this is it's sophisticated. You see some of these streamers and it looks like it's doing fun. Like they're making sounds go off and all this stuff and easy and bing bang boom. Not easy at all. So when I started the philosophy roulette, it was basically right here in this setup. I mean, I didn't have the boom arm that the mic's on now, but it was this. I bought this streaming pack, and I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna read a stupid paper on Twitch. I'm just gonna go do that, and I could do that. I had the camera, just this. I didn't have the title, or I had some title. I didn't have chat set up, and I just read a paper with no highlighting or anything. It took a whole bit, and I could do just the basic content wasn't so bad. All the stuff I do now, it's like hugely more complicated, but like you can do the most basic thing. I got laid off from work due to coronavirus hitting New York City in March of 2020. I started this 3 days later. Let's play with reading papers, yeah. To be fair, I had thought of doing something like broadcast. I had the mic already. I had a podcast mic. Like this mic here has a built-in USB out. Most mics don't. I had bought this years ago. This is the Samsung Q2U. Yeah. See, me was Twitch. That's the difference. I've seen people, do like, there has been some philosophy stuff on YouTube. It's not the same. But like to get this whole setup, it's not easy at all. Like this, I had a podcast mic to begin with. Yeah. So I had stuff. I mean, I had a webcam, of course, but yeah. Well, you have to ask why are they doing it. You're not gonna get views. You like I'm gonna have a few views. I'm never gonna be a huge streamer doing this. And on YouTube, again, if you're doing straight up academic work, you're not gonna have a ton of people. Like it's just there isn't the audience for just doing something that's basically you have to have a lot of effort into. And that's not why people go to YouTube, is like to do work. If they wanted to go take a class, they'd go take a class, or they'd sit in a lecture, but it's hard. So, but the political stuff, that's has to do with society. They want to do that. If you could figure a way to make philosophy popular, I mean, more power to you. It ain't easy, and believe me, there are stuff. Mark Jago, you can look him up. He does philosophy stuff. No, people will watch anything. I'm just telling you from experience. Like, if you're gonna do something like this, sure, yeah. So this is what was funny was I read Mark Jago's I've read Mark Jago's stuff on stream, and I've like emailed him. He was like, "Oh, looks cool," like, and stuff like that. Mark Jago seems like a good guy. Yeah, no, that's fine. Chat's always delayed. It's Twitch. But yeah, it's like, how do you do it? It's not so easy. If you could figure out a way to make it popular, I mean, it'd be great. But not so easy. I mean, everyone wants to popularize their stuff. I think I read one of Mark's papers, or maybe it wasn't Mark, I forget. And like I was like I was reading a lot of papers at the get-go, and he was like, "How long have you been doing this for?" I was like, "Since Monday." Like it was like Friday. I hope you get good health care. I wish good health care upon you. I mean, I don't know where you live. If you're in the US, I hope it gets paid for somehow. You have a meme page. Wow, with 90K followers. That's amazing. I don't go on Facebook. Or I'm very, very, very rarely on Facebook, so I wouldn't know. Yeah. Oh, you're Australian, so maybe you would do better than we will with healthcare. I don't really know what the healthcare situation is. Yeah. Okay, though. But yeah. If I go much longer, I'm going to lose my voice, unfortunately. So I think I might be done for papers for the night. Yeah. So, unless anyone has any other requests, something short, I think I'll end stream soon.